He was the man who seemed untouchable. Wealth, power, and a life the world envied. Yet behind the doors of his mansion, the billionaire was crumbling in ways no one could imagine. He had everything. A grand mansion in the Hamptons, shining bright by the sea. A billion-dollar company in the heart of New York. A name the press always linked with power and ruthless control. But tonight, the place that should have been filled with light was drowned in heavy silence. The long hallway stretched ahead, dimly lit by a single lamp. The sound of Grace Johnson's heels echoed, each step bouncing off the marble walls. She carried a folder, just as she had many times before, but as she neared a half-closed door, she froze. From inside came a sound she never expected, sobbing, the broken sound of a man crying. Grace pushed the door open gently. There, before her, was William Carter, the cold, powerful billionaire, collapsed on the cold bathroom floor. His black suit was rumpled. His trembling hands clutched a photo frame of a radiant woman with a glowing smile. Elizabeth, his wife. Tears streamed down the face once thought untouchable. His voice cracked, breaking apart. "I killed my wife and my child." Grace stood frozen at the doorway, her heart pounding. Only minutes earlier, nothing had prepared her for this moment. If you were Grace, would you walk away or stay to face his pain? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to see what happens next. It had all begun the moment she arrived at the Hamptons mansion. The estate, usually glowing with light and filled with staff, had been dark and silent. The guard had waved her through without a word. That alone was strange. Usually, every entry was announced, every step monitored. Tonight, silence reigned. The driveway stretched long and empty. No staff, no sound of gardeners, no lights burning in the windows. Only the faint glow of the moon touched the marble columns at the entrance. Grace parked, stepped out, and felt the cool wind brush against her face. She had been here before, but always at daylight, always with the distant hum of activity. Now, the estate felt hollow. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Her heels clicked softly against the stone as she climbed the steps. She hesitated at the massive double doors. William Carter was a man who demanded precision, who tolerated no intrusion. Coming here at night was unusual, unsettling. She pushed the door. It opened without resistance. Inside, the mansion was dim. Furniture loomed like silhouettes. The silence pressed down until her own breath sounded loud. Why was the house, usually alive with servants and staff, so empty tonight? Something was not right. Grace stepped inside. The heavy doors closed behind her with a low echo. The vast entrance hall stretched wide, lined with marble floors and twin staircases. Every surface reflected the dim light, cold and distant. Her heels tapped against the floor. Each step rang louder than it should have. The sound of her own presence unsettled her. This house was never quiet. Usually, there were voices, footsteps, movement. But tonight, only emptiness answered. She clutched the folder tighter. William Carter had built an empire through control and discipline. He was known for his precision, his relentless authority. Never casual, never vulnerable. To serve him was to remain unseen, efficient, invisible. She had learned that over years at his side, and yet here she was, moving deeper into a silence that felt heavy with secrets. She should have left the file and gone, but something in the stillness drew her forward. The portraits on the wall seemed to watch as she passed. The chandeliers above glittered faintly but gave no warmth. Every inch of the mansion whispered wealth, power, and order. But the silence told another story. It was the sound of absence, the sound of loss. Grace paused at a dresser near the end of the hallway. A silver frame caught her eye. She should have looked away, but her gaze locked on the image. It was William Carter. Younger, smiling, his arm wrapped around a radiant woman. Elizabeth. Her face glowed with joy, her belly round with pregnancy. The photo radiated warmth, a life full of promise. Grace's throat tightened. She had heard whispers, but no one spoke openly about the night tragedy struck. The picture told the story without words. A family almost whole, frozen in time. She glanced away quickly, guilt pricking her. This was not hers to see. Yet the smile of Elizabeth lingered in her mind, and the silence of the house pressed harder. Behind her, the air felt colder. The wealth around her, the polished wood, the crystal vases, the marble floors, looked suddenly hollow. What did power matter when love had been lost so cruelly? Grace swallowed and steadied herself. She turned toward the master bedroom wing, her steps slow, deliberate. A faint strip of light escaped through a half-closed door. Her heart quickened. Something waited beyond that door. Something William never showed to anyone. Grace stopped before the frosted glass door. A sound drifted through the stillness. Not footsteps, not voices. A broken sound, muffled, raw. Her breath caught. It was a man's voice, trembling, cracked with sorrow. At first, she thought she was mistaken. William Carter did not break. He commanded. He ordered. He built fortunes with a single decision. But the sound came again. Low, stifled sobs, as if someone fought to hide them. Grace's hand trembled against the frame. She could see his shadow through the frosted glass. A tall figure hunched, shoulders shaking. His head bowed low. In his hands was something pressed close, clutched as if life itself depended on it. The outline of a photo frame glimmered faintly in the dim light. Her heart pounded. The man the world called untouchable, the Ice King of Wall Street, was unraveling alone in the dark. She should turn away. This was private, too private. But she couldn't move. Compassion, stronger than fear, rooted her to the spot. For the first time, Grace realized William Carter was not unbreakable. He was shattered. The door clicked softly as Grace pushed it open. The faint sound made William Carter look up. His eyes were red, his face pale, his composure broken. "What are you doing here?" His voice was rough, but it carried the sharp edge of command. Grace froze at the threshold. The man before her was not the unshakable figure she had served for years. He looked smaller somehow, collapsed into grief. "Leave, now. Drop the file and get out." His words cracked like a whip. Grace flinched. Every instinct told her to obey. She had always obeyed. That was how one survived under William Carter's rule. But she did not move. The sight of him, suit rumpled, eyes burning with tears, clutching a photo as though it were life itself, rooted her to the spot. "No," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but it held. "Not like this. I can't leave you like this." His eyes blazed. "I gave you an order, and I'm disobeying it," she whispered. The words surprised even her. The silence stretched heavy between them. For the first time, power clashed not with defiance, but with compassion. For a moment, William only stared. His jaw clenched. Then a harsh, broken laugh escaped his lips. "You think you know me, Grace?" His voice cracked between anger and despair. "None of you know me. None of you know what happened that night." Grace's pulse quickened. She had served him for 3 years, always in the shadow of his rules. She knew his moods, his silence, his authority, but she had never seen this man. The laugh turned into a ragged breath. He pressed the photo frame against his forehead as though the weight of it might crush him. "You all think I am ruthless, cold, untouchable, that I built this empire with iron and never bent." His eyes glistened. "But you don't know the truth. You don't know what I lost." Grace stepped forward, not too close, but closer than she ever had. Her voice was low, careful. "Then tell me." His gaze lifted, meeting hers. For the first time, his mask slipped completely. His lips trembled. "It was our anniversary," he whispered. "And that night, I made a choice I can never undo." William's voice dropped lower, each word heavy. "She had prepared everything. Dinner, music, candles. She wanted me home early. Elizabeth always wanted us together on that night." His grip on the frame tightened, veins standing against his skin. "I promised her. I told her I would be home, but I wasn't. Meetings, clients, deals. I told myself it would only take an hour, just one more call, just one more contract." Grace's throat ached. She could picture the scene, the woman waiting, the table set, the hope fading with every tick of the clock. When I finally came home, the house was quiet, too quiet. She had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted. She tried to stand when she woke. She slipped. She fell. His voice fractured. The photo frame shook in his hands. Her stomach. The baby. His words broke, scattered like glass. Grace pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes stung, her chest tight. William's eyes burned with anguish. "I carried her to the car. I drove like a madman. But it was too late." His whisper was raw. "I wasn't there. And because of that, I lost them both." William's breath came in jagged bursts as he forced the words out. She woke up. She must have tried to stand. She was weak. Too weak. She slipped. She hit the floor. His voice cracked. Grace's chest tightened. She saw it in her mind. Elizabeth alone, reaching for balance, then falling. The silence of the empty house swallowing her cry. She hit her stomach. William whispered, his hands shaking violently now. There was blood. So much blood. He pressed the photo tighter to his chest as if it could protect him from the memory. I carried her to the car. My hands were covered. I drove through the night like a madman. Lights, horns, I didn't care. I just needed to reach the hospital. His words tumbled, harsh and fast. Grace's own breath grew shallow. They tried, he said, voice dropping to a whisper, but they couldn't save her. Couldn't save either of them. The room felt smaller, the air heavy with grief. Grace bit her lip, fighting her own tears. The man before her, once untouchable, now looked like a prisoner of his own past. And in that prison, he carried the weight of 2 lives lost. William's voice trembled, raw with self-condemnation. I killed them, Grace. Do you hear me? I killed my wife and my child. Grace's head shook before she could even form words. No. No, you didn't. His eyes flared with torment. I wasn't there when she needed me. I chose meetings, clients, deals. I told myself it was only for an hour. That hour cost them everything. Grace's tears broke free. She covered her mouth, but the sound of his anguish cut through her defenses. You don't understand, William pressed. It wasn't an accident. It was me. My selfishness, my arrogance. I thought work mattered more, and now I have nothing. His voice cracked, rising and falling like waves against stone. I failed her. I failed them both, and every day I wake up I feel their absence. Every night I hear her voice calling me home. Grace whispered through her tears. It was not your fault. But William shook his head violently, his breath uneven. No, Grace, it was me. All me. And there is no forgiveness for what I've done. His words bled despair, spiraling deeper into guilt. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence pressed down, broken only by William's unsteady breaths. Grace's heart pounded. She had never been this close to him, not like this. Always the assistant, always in the shadows. But now he was no longer her employer. He was a man crushed under grief. Her hand lifted before she could stop herself. Slowly, carefully, she placed it on his arm. William flinched. The contact startled him, a barrier crossed. But then he stilled. His eyes lowered to her hand, resting lightly against the fabric of his sleeve. Grace's voice was soft, trembling. Pity is not why I'm here. I see you, William. Not the billionaire, not the cold mask. Just you. His chest rose sharply, his jaw clenched as though fighting the flood inside. For the first time, Grace felt the distance between them shrink. It was no longer employer and employee, no longer power and subservience. It was 2 souls caught in the weight of loss. Her hand did not move away. His arm remained beneath it, heavy with sorrow. And in that fragile moment, compassion broke the silence where authority once ruled. William's gaze sank to the floor. His shoulders trembled beneath Grace's hand. I don't know how to live without her, he whispered. The words broke like glass in his throat. Grace's chest ached. She had never seen him admit weakness, never heard him confess fear. He had always stood like stone. Now he was crumbling. You don't have to know right now, she said gently. You don't have to do it alone. His eyes lifted, uncertain, almost lost. Let someone help you remember how. The silence stretched. The marble floor, the cold walls, the weight of years of guilt pressed around them. For a moment, Grace feared he would push her away, retreat behind command and anger, but he didn't. He stayed there, hollow, fragile, listening. Her voice softened further. If she were here, William, would she want this? Would she want you broken, destroyed, living like a ghost? His jaw tightened. His breath caught. I don't know anymore, he admitted, so quietly she barely heard. Grace's hand remained steady on his arm. You will, she whispered. In time. With help. And for the first time, he did not argue. Morning light spilled across the office. Papers lay stacked, phones rang, voices moved in careful rhythm. Grace sat at her desk, her fingers resting on the keys, but she couldn't type. Her mind replayed the night in the bathroom, his broken whisper, his grief, his confession. The door opened. William entered. Immaculate suit, polished shoes, his expression composed, distant. The Ice King restored. He gave a curt nod, his tone clipped. Good morning. She handed him the day's folder. Their fingers brushed for an instant. He pulled back as though burned. To everyone else, he was unchanged. Commands sharp, presence cold. Meetings filled the hours. Authority filled the room. But Grace saw the difference. His shoulders held too stiff. His jaw clenched a second too long. His eyes, though steady, still carried the faint redness of sleeplessness. It was the same man, but not. The world saw control. She saw the fracture beneath. And as the office moved like a machine around them, Grace carried the secret weight of knowing. He was not untouchable. Not anymore. By noon, the whispers began. 2 secretaries passed by the break room, their voices low. "She's been with him longer than anyone else. Do you think—" "Maybe," another scoffed softly. "After what happened to his wife? Don't be ridiculous. He'll never—" The words cut off as Grace stepped in to refill her coffee. Their eyes flicked toward her, then away, pretending nothing had been said. She forced a smile, left the room, but her chest tightened. Later, in the hallway, she noticed glances lingering too long. A junior assistant whispered, then fell silent when she approached. Even the interns looked at her differently. It was the smallest details. The way people noted how she stayed late. The way her steps slowed outside his office. The way William's gaze flickered toward her, almost involuntary. Grace lowered her head, her heart racing. She didn't want this. She didn't want gossip, suspicion, or judgment. She wasn't here to replace anyone. She wasn't here to invite scandal. But she couldn't erase what she had seen. She couldn't forget the broken man on the bathroom floor. And deep down, she knew others would soon notice too. The office was empty by nightfall. Lights dimmed. The city glowed outside the windows. Grace lingered at her desk, sorting papers, when the phone rang. His voice came through, low, strained. "Come to my office." Her steps were quiet as she entered. William stood by the window, the skyline reflected in the glass. He didn't turn right away. His tone was clipped, but beneath it she heard unease. "You didn't tell anyone, did you?" Grace shook her head quickly. "No, I would never." His shoulders eased just slightly. A breath he had been holding released. "Good," he murmured, "because no one needs to know." Silence filled the room. Grace stepped closer, her voice firm but soft. "You don't have to carry this alone forever." Finally, he turned. His eyes met hers, tired, searching. "You think talking changes anything? That it brings her back?" "No," she said, "but it can bring you back." His gaze lingered on her, vulnerable, worn. For a long moment, neither spoke. And in that fragile pause, trust began to take root. William's eyes drifted past Grace, lost in a memory. His voice lowered. "She used to wait for me," he said. "Every night. Even when she was tired. Even when she should have been sleeping. She hated going to bed alone." Grace stayed silent, letting him continue. "She would curl up on the couch, holding one of my jackets. She said it smelled like me. Sometimes I carried her upstairs. Other times, I just watched her, telling myself I'd be home earlier tomorrow." His throat tightened. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She pictured Elizabeth, fragile and glowing, waiting with quiet devotion. "But tomorrow never came," William whispered. His jaw clenched. His shoulders stiffened. "I always chose work." Grace's voice trembled, but she found words. "She loved you, William. That's what matters." He shook his head slowly. "Love wasn't enough. Not when I failed her." The silence thickened between them. Grace wanted to reach out, but she held back, knowing he wasn't ready. Her heart broke for him, and for the woman who had waited in vain. The air hung heavy in the office. William stood by the window, the city lights casting faint shadows across his face. For a long time, he said nothing. Then his voice came, steady but low. "Come here tomorrow evening," he said. Grace blinked, uncertain. "Tomorrow?" "There's something I want to show you." Her heart skipped. He had never spoken like this, never invited her beyond the world of schedules, meetings, and silence. "What is it?" she asked. His eyes shifted back to the skyline. His tone closed again, firm. "You'll see." Grace hesitated. Doubt rose inside her. Was this wise? Was she stepping too far into a life that wasn't hers? But beneath the fear, curiosity sparked. The man who had locked his soul away for years was opening a door, if only slightly. She gave a small nod. "I'll come." William didn't move. He simply said, "Good," and turned away. Grace left his office with her heart racing. What could he possibly want her to see? The next evening, Grace followed William deeper into the mansion. The halls were darker here, quieter. He stopped before a door she had never noticed. With slow hands, he unlocked it. The hinges creaked softly as the door swung open. Grace's breath caught. Inside was a nursery, frozen in time. The walls were painted a gentle cream, shelves lined with tiny clothes folded neatly, untouched. A crib stood in the corner, a pale blue blanket draped across it. A soft floral scent lingered faintly in the air, as if the room still waited. On the dresser, a small jewelry box lay open. A pearl necklace glimmered in the light. William stepped inside, his hand brushing against the crib. His voice cracked. She chose every detail, every color. She wanted it perfect before the baby came. Grace's throat closed. Tears blurred her vision. The room pulsed with the weight of dreams that never came true. Nothing here had been touched since the night of loss. It was a shrine to what could have been. William stood in the center of the room, his shoulders heavy. "Sometimes I sit here for hours," he admitted. "I punish myself. I imagine what should have been. If I had come home sooner, if I had been there." Grace stepped closer, her voice shaking. "William, this was a tragedy, not a choice, not your crime." His head snapped toward her, eyes filled with anguish. "How can you say that? I wasn't there. She trusted me, and I failed her." Grace's tears fell. "You loved her. That is not failure. That is life. Painful, unfair, but not your fault." He looked around the room, his face twisted with grief. His hand gripped the crib rail so tightly his knuckles turned white. "I see her here," he whispered. "Every night, reaching for me, falling again, and I can't stop it." Grace's heart broke. She stepped closer still. "Don't bury yourself with her," she said softly. "She would never want that." The words hung in the air, fragile but firm. William's voice rose, raw and jagged. "Then why do I feel like I might as well have pushed her? Why do I feel like it was my hand that ended her life?" The force of his confession shook the room. His chest heaved, his face pale, his eyes blazing with grief. Grace's tears blurred her sight. She reached out, unable to hold back. Her hand closed gently over his. "No," she whispered, firm despite her trembling. "Because you loved her too much. That's why it hurts this way. Because losing her broke you." His breath came in harsh gasps. His fingers clutched hers tightly, desperate, almost fearful of letting go. Grace held on. Her own tears spilled freely. "It wasn't your fault," she said again, her voice fierce with compassion. "It was love, and love is never the crime." For a moment the world stilled. The weight of years of guilt pressed against his chest, but her hand anchored him. And in that fragile silence, William Carter, the man the world thought unshakable, finally let himself break. William's grip tightened around her hand. It was sudden, almost desperate, as though the touch itself kept him from falling apart. Grace froze. She had never felt his skin against hers in this way. It was not a handshake, not a brush of fingers while passing a file. This was need. This was a man holding on because he was terrified of letting go. His hand trembled in hers. His breathing came ragged. He bowed his head, eyes squeezed shut, as though the tears shamed him. Grace did not pull away. She let her fingers steady his, firm but gentle. Her own tears fell, but she didn't hide them. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. For the first time in years, William Carter did not stand apart. He did not cover his grief with authority or anger. He let it spill, and he clung to the only hand offered. Grace felt the bond settle between them. It was fragile, unspoken, but real. And in that moment, he was no longer just her employer. He was a man broken by love, reaching for another human being. Later, when the storm of grief eased into silence, William's voice returned. Low, shaken. "If I live again," he said, his eyes hollow, "if I let myself feel something beyond this pain, does it mean I betray her? Does it mean I betray Elizabeth?" Grace's breath caught. She saw the torment in his gaze, the war between loyalty to the past and the faint pull of survival. "No," she answered, firm but soft. "It is not betrayal. It is life. It is survival." He shook his head slowly. "How can I call it life when she is gone? Every smile, every breath without her feels like treason." Grace stepped closer, her eyes wet. "It isn't treason to live. She loved you, William. Love never asks you to die with it. It asks you to carry it forward." His shoulders sagged, his eyes closed. "I don't know if I can." Grace's voice steadied. "Then let someone help you try." The silence that followed was heavy, but something shifted. His fear was still there, but so was her voice, anchoring him to a truth he could not deny. The clock read 3:20 a.m. Grace's phone rang, sharp in the stillness. Her heart lurched as she saw his name. She answered quickly. "William?" His voice was ragged, breathless. "I saw her, in my dream. She was falling again. I reached, but I couldn't stop it. I can't—" His words broke into gasps. Grace sat upright in bed, clutching the phone. "Breathe," she urged. "You're safe. It was only a dream." On the other end, silence stretched. She could hear the sound of his unsteady breathing. The pain was raw, spilling through every word. "I can't do this alone anymore," he whispered finally. Grace pressed the phone tighter to her ear. Her voice came steady, though her chest ached. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The line was quiet, then a shaky exhale reached her, a sound of relief, fragile but real. Grace closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. She had never expected her life to cross into his this way. But in that moment, across the darkness of two separate rooms, she became the voice that held him together. The following days felt different inside Carter Enterprises. Subtle, almost invisible, but real. William still commanded with authority. Meetings moved swiftly. Deadlines were met. Yet the edge of ice that once froze every room had softened. When a junior assistant handed him a report, he paused. "Thank you," he said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Another day, in the hallway, an intern stumbled with a stack of files. William bent down, helped gather them, then gave a brief nod. No one could remember him doing that before. Grace noticed more than anyone. His tone was still firm, but less harsh. His gaze still sharp, but less cold. And sometimes, when he thought no one watched, a faint smile flickered. The staff whispered in disbelief. The man who once terrified them now seemed human. Grace kept her distance, maintaining her role. But inside, she knew. She had seen the breaking. She had heard the confessions in the night. This change was not an accident. It was the slow return of a man learning to breathe again. And she was the quiet witness to it all. One evening, after a long meeting, the room emptied. Papers lay scattered across the table. Grace gathered them, her movements careful. William lingered by the window, his hands in his pockets. The city lights reflected in his eyes. "You've changed me," he said suddenly. Grace froze, the pen slipping from her fingers. "I don't know what you mean." He turned slightly, his expression unreadable, his voice lower now. "For years, I was dead inside. Cold, hollow. But you make me feel again, and that terrifies me." Her heart raced. She steadied her voice, though it trembled. "It terrifies me too, because I don't want to be her replacement. I don't want people to think I'm taking advantage of you." William's gaze met hers, raw and searching. "You're not replacing her," he said firmly. "No one could. But you're saving me." Grace swallowed hard, her chest tightening. She turned away, gathering the files quickly. "I need time, and you need to be sure this isn't grief speaking." His reply was soft. "Then let me prove it." The air between them throbbed with unspoken fear and fragile hope. 2 weeks later, he asked her to come. The drive was quiet, the sky painted in muted tones of dusk. They walked together through rows of stone until he stopped. Before them stood a polished headstone. Elizabeth Carter. Beside it, a smaller engraving. Beloved child, gone too soon. William sank to his knees. His hand trembled as it brushed the letters. "I failed you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I promised to protect you, to be there, and I wasn't. I let you down in the worst way." Grace stood back, tears burning her eyes. She let the moment breathe. His hand moved to his ring. Slowly, he pulled the band from his finger. He stared at it for a long time, then placed it gently on the cold stone. "I'll always love you," he said softly, "but it's time I start living again. Not forgetting. Just living." His shoulders shook as he exhaled. Grace stepped forward, resting a hand on his shoulder. He didn't flinch. When he rose, he held her hand tightly. His eyes were wet, but inside them flickered a fragile peace. For the first time, he was letting go. They left the cemetery slowly. The air was cool, the evening sky painted in fading gold. William's hand remained in Grace's, firm yet trembling. He stopped at the gates, turning toward her. His eyes were wet but steady. "Grace," he whispered, "can you be my light?" Her breath caught. The words pressed against her chest. She saw the raw plea in his eyes, the longing of a man reaching out from years of darkness. She hesitated. Fear whispered inside her. What if this was only grief? What if she was stepping into a place that was not hers to fill? But William's hand held hers tightly, as if letting go meant sinking again. Grace exhaled. Slowly, her fingers closed around his. She squeezed back. "Yes," she said softly. "I can try." His shoulders eased, the tightness in his chest loosening for the first time in years. Together, they walked forward, not as employer and assistant, but as two souls bound by loss, daring to carry each other toward the light. The change did not come overnight, but everyone noticed. The mansion, once silent and cold, now carried the warmth of life again. William began joining the staff for dinner at the long table. At first awkward, but then, slowly, laughter returned. Jokes were shared, stories told. The house no longer felt like a tomb. At the company, whispers shifted. The Ice King, who once froze the halls, now greeted employees with nods, even smiles. He thanked people when reports were handed in. One afternoon, he paused to ask a junior assistant about her weekend. When she stammered out an answer, he actually smiled. Grace stayed near but never sought attention. She still carried his files, reminded him of schedules, kept her place. Yet now, their conversations slipped beyond business. In the evenings, they sometimes walked together, speaking not of contracts but of memories, fears, and quiet hopes. William was changing, slowly, carefully, and Grace, always steady, walked beside him. The world saw a man softening. Grace saw a man learning to live again. One evening, long after the staff had gone, the study was quiet. Grace sorted the day's papers, her movements calm, precise. William stood near the window, the city lights shimmering in his eyes. His hands were folded behind his back. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then his voice broke the silence. Gentle, vulnerable. "Grace," he said, "would you have dinner with me?" She looked up, startled. "Dinner?" "Not here, not for work." His gaze met hers, steady but uncertain. "Just the two of us. For me. For us." Grace's hands stilled on the folder. Her heart quickened. She searched his face for clarity, for truth, and in his eyes she saw no mask, no coldness, only a man offering what little courage he had. Her lips curved, soft, unguarded. "I'd like that." Relief flickered across his features. A small, genuine smile touched his mouth. The papers lay forgotten. The night stretched wide, fragile with possibility, and for the first time they were not bound by grief alone. They were bound by choice. He once believed he had everything: wealth, power, reputation, but none of it saved him from despair. None of it filled the silence of loss. In the end, the only thing that lifted him was love, not the kind built on fortune or fame, but the simple love of a steady hand, reaching across the darkness. He thought survival was betrayal, but survival became the truest way to honor what was lost. To live again, not forgetting, but carrying love forward. If you believe that a single hand can rescue a broken heart, share your thoughts in the comments, share this story with others, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next journey that might touch your heart. Money fades, power fades, but love, the only true light, never leaves us.